Welcome to this week's fun activity in five. I just lost my dice. Today, I want to talk to you about a dice game. Um, this game goes by lots of names. I use Seis in my classroom. It also goes by Mi Lapis and a couple of other things. But basically, it's a translation race game. Not the most input-based activity, but I like to do this activity whenever there's a story that I feel is maybe a little more complex, has a little more vocab than students are used to, a lot of new words. I want to make sure they're really getting the meaning of the story before we do it as a class. So I like to use SACE as kind of a pre-reading activity. The story example that I'm going to show you is called La Oruga. This is a story I did in my seventh grade class. It's about a caterpillar from Chile. So, what I did whenever we first did SACE with this story, because I knew there were words like oruga that they weren't going to know because they'd never seen before, we did a vocab pre reading. I put on the board 8 words in the story that I figured students would struggle with. Words like oruga, caterpillar, didn't think they would know that. Edificio, a building. Some students have seen that word, but it's not a high frequency word. I put puerta up there to remind them. They've seen puerta, they know puerta, but to remind them of what puerta is. Rama is in the story, stick. So I gave them several words that I needed to make sure they knew because they weren't going to be successful at SACE if they did not know those words. We went over those words. I gave them like 2 minutes to read through the story after we went over those words. And then I made them give me 5 more words that they felt like they didn't know and would need to know. At this point, students still did not know what activity we were going to do, which was going to be SACE. They did not know that. So they pulled 5 more words out that I did not put on the board, that I created a list for them, just to provide an extra scaffold and support for students that needed it. Students then get in partners. This is where my class has kind of mixed up SACE a little bit. I have some students that will take one paper and they will write back and forth on the same paper. I have other students that will each use their own paper and write on their own paper, trading a pencil back and forth. And then I have other students that will look at a paper and write in their notebook. You can do any variation of those depending on how much paper you would like to use or save. So student one gets the paper and the writing utensil. And when you say go, student one starts writing. They are translating this story on their paper, their notebook, whatever that looks like. While they do that, student two is rolling a die. They are rolling a die until they get to SACE or whatever number you choose. We use SACE. When they hit SACE, they say SACE or whatever number you have. Then the roles switch. The person that was writing gets the die. The other person starts writing their story, whether it's on the same paper, different paper, in their notebook. The goal is to see which student can accomplish translating the entire story first. I like to give students a really long text for SACE. You can see this story is front and back. I would bet in the 15 minutes we played, this was about as far as most students got. My middle schoolers are not terribly fast writers. So it's an activity that I can rely on knowing is going to take a good amount of time because they're just not fast when it comes to writing. If your students write faster and you do want them to finish because you want to check the story or have them help other people or whatever when they're done, I would recommend not giving them much more than maybe 2 paragraphs to translate. Or you could do a paragraph and do a real short version of SACE. We, my students will play all day if I will let them. We usually play for about 15 minutes of class. And by that point, I'm like, no, sorry, time to go. So SACE is this week's activity, works with any level. I played it this week in Spanish 1, Spanish 2, and Spanish 3. Great way to check for some understanding, to build some student confidence. I personally like to do this activity before I read. So we have looked at the embedded reading of the story. We've done the gesture retell with the story. We've done SACE with the story after we did some pre-reading vocab. Today, we're actually going to go through the whole story together. So they've seen it like 3 times now. And I think SACE is a good way to look at the story without doing the story with your class. I hope you enjoyed this activity and I hope to see you soon.